Hi everybody, welcome to the month of March. This is what we call Make It March, and that is 30 or 31 days of making things, sewing, knitting, quilting, baking, cooking, trying out new patterns, trying out new recipes. We just fill the month with beautiful things that we make with our own two hands. So hope everyone is having a good start to the month, and please feel free to say hi in the comments if you're watching today. I'll be here every Friday for this month at 3 p.m. just to give you a little bit of inspiration to keep your hands busy, mainly with knitting needles. And I'll be showing some of my whips, which are works in progress, and finished objects, which are FOs, and maybe some patterns that are for future dream whips. So then maybe you can inspire me and I will get busy knitting up new things for the store, because eventually we will be open to in-store shopping again, hopefully at the end of March. Today we are looking at beautiful blue skies in Muskoka, some feathery white clouds, but it is bitterly cold. Don't let the sunshine fool you. It is so cold. The wind is blowing from the north. So what do I have on my needles? Well, last week I showed you an FO, almost FO. Now it's completely finished. I've blocked it and I've added little wooden toggle buttons to give it a nice outdoorsy rustic look. I had the choice of the toggles, which are barrel-shaped wood in a dark reddish brown natural finish, or I had round coconut buttons, which are also natural and they have really interesting coloring on them. But the round shape and the dark coconut color just didn't really work with the salt and pepper effect of the yarn, so I went with the toggles. Hope you like that. That one is called On the Rocks Hoodie, and I've just finished the pattern editing, and it will be up on Ravelry hopefully later this weekend. I've sized it from 1 year up to 8 years, so it gives a good variety for toddlers and older children. You can also do it without the hood. It's meant to have a round neck in the contrast color, but the hood is optional. You pick up in the main color and work the hood from the neckband. So either way looks great. It's a soft, chunky weight yarn, and I put together some colors here to give you some inspiration. This one is a size 2-year-old, so that means the sleeves can be rolled up a little bit for the first little while and the child can grow into it. There's lots of room for the child to grow with the cardigan because it's a soft, pliable fabric. So this could be one combination. You could have the light teal together with the charcoal border. That would tone it down, not as bright as the Canadian red. And this would be interesting if you have memories of, like I do, growing up with a lot of European clothing. We used to wear a Loden green boiled wool jacket when we were little, my brothers and myself. It was handed down from relatives, and a camel border. So that would look great for a little boy or a girl. It's unisex, so the dark green heather, which is a Loden green, with the camel for the contrast. The project just takes one skein of the contrast, and depending what size you're doing, it'll be about 3, 4, or 5 skeins of the main color. And this is the original colorway. I've used the salt and pepper with the Canadian bright red. And then I thought for a little girl for the spring, maybe an Easter jacket. I'm not sure when Easter is this year. Hi, Deborah. Oh, this pullover. Yeah, I'm going to tell you about that pullover in a minute. This would be pretty for a little girl. You could have that soft lilac mist for the main color and then border it with a creamy white. And then the last color would be very nautical. We have our indigo blue for the main color, and that could be bordered with the red. Or, very classic, you could border it with the white, or vice versa. You could do white for the main color and the border in the blue. So there are lots of combinations. I'll be interested to see what some of you come up with if you're planning on knitting it. So I will put all the links to patterns that are available on Ravelry in the comments below after the video airs, so you don't have to search too far for information. So that is my finished object from last week. And then I am working on a brand new whip, which I'm really enjoying. My granny stripe blanket, which is crocheted. I've shown you that in February for Finish It Fridays. It is sitting neglected because now I'm into something that is really keeping my focus. I'm not sure, but I'll let you guess and you can tell me what you think I'm making. Basically, it's a strip. And there's two different pattern stitches. I'll bring it up to the camera so you can see it. Just have to get myself untangled. And I'm knitting it on a 4.5 millimeter needle, so it's got a very nice light lacy effect, and I think that will make it just perfect for spring and summer evenings. So there's a close-up of one of the panels. I have to knit 4 panels. Any idea what I'm making? So on this side we have the Swiss cheese effect, very airy, built-in air conditioning. And then this pattern has little bundles. So about every 8 rows I alternate and I wrap the yarn around a certain number of stitches. So when that's blocked out, it's almost going to look like little stars. And the yarn I'm working with is a beautiful yarn by Manos. It is hand dyed, hand spun, so we get interesting little slubs of yarn. You just never know where the yarn is going to get thicker or a little bit thinner. And it is a sport weight yarn. So generally a sport weight yarn is knit on about 3.5, 3 3/4 to 4 millimeter needle. But to give it a really nice light, lofty effect, I'm knitting it on a 4.5 according to the pattern. Hi Janie, how are you? Hope you're getting lots of knitting done for Make It March. Yeah, so the color is beautiful. I would say it's sort of a cyclamen magenta, and it has an undertone of gray because there is some linen in the yarn. So it's called Milo, and it is a combination of 65% merino wool, 35% linen. It is spun so lightly, almost like a cloud, that the yardage is incredible. For 100 grams, I have 380 yards. So I think I'll probably use 3 skeins for what I'm making. I'm still letting you guess what it is, but I will show you a picture in the pattern book. And Milo is made in Uruguay, and what I like about it, it's made by a women's co-op. So each of the yarn skeins have a little label on it, and it will give you the location of where the yarn was spun and dyed, and the artisan who created the yarn. So this one, I can't really read the writing to tell you the location, but I can show you the tag. They're all hand signed. This one is Artisan Veronique. So that's a special touch. Knowing where the yarn comes from connects you to the maker. So I have to knit 4 strips. The first strip is going to be 29.5 inches long. So I am at least 2/3 of the way. So that's 2 nights of knitting. And this is 1 ball or 1 skein. So I'll definitely get 1 strip and maybe another half strip out of 100 grams. So now I'm going to show you what I'm making because I don't think anyone has guessed. Hi Lorraine. Hi Patty. Ah, Deborah's pretty close. Some kind of wrap. Okay, you're getting onto the theme now. So I'm knitting it from the Cadia Concept number 5. Cadia is my favorite yarn company. They are Spanish, but they translate all the patterns into English. And I've been using Cadia patterns in the store for over 25 years, and their yarns are beautiful. So I'm going to show you what I'm making. I know you're going to like it. It's going to be a store sample. Okay, it's a poncho. So that classifies as a wrap. So the construction of it is like a jigsaw puzzle. But basically you can see in the picture there is a panel that I've shown you that has the 2 different stitches worked over it. The bundle stitch and the lacy stitch that represents Swiss cheese whenever I'm hungry. So yes, it is like a jigsaw puzzle. There is a schematic that is a blueprint for how you put it together. And they give you a chart for the lace pattern work, and they give you a chart for that bundle stitch. So the written directions are very brief. It's basically just cast on a certain number, follow chart A, follow chart B, and then I will show you the schematic. Okay, so schematic over on the left. So that is showing each section. They're staggered. One section of the pattern is longer than the other, just like a jigsaw puzzle. And those 4 pieces will fit together. If you can see over here on the right, that's the diagram for the assembly of the poncho. So if you're interested, just stay tuned every Friday and I will give you a little bit more update of how it is coming together. But for those of you who have knit with yarns that are partially linen or pure linen, you'll know that once the garment is blocked, it is incredibly drapey and it just has its own memory. You know, it just falls so gracefully and so nicely. It's not a clingy type of yarn, and it's also very cool and airy. So it'll be perfect for spring and summer. The merino just acts to soften the linen, because the linen on its own can be very stringy and not much softness and not much give. So the wool does all that. They work very well together. So that is Milo, handmade in Uruguay. These are some of the other colors that we have in, and there are some new colors on the way. So we will have the poncho kit in the store. So we have this very soft rose with a gray undertone. Maybe I'll bring these up to the camera. Hi Colleen, thank you. I think it looks great too. this is the rose, very soft. You can see the linen thread going through it. That creates that gray shadow. And the little whiskers that you see on the edge of the yarn strands, that's part of the linen fiber. And we have a beautiful indigo blue. That would look great with white capri pants or wide leg pants. And a deep grayish purple. And a beautiful greenish blue, emerald green with some tones of blue in there. Great combination of colors. So that is Milo from Manos. And today I'm wearing one of my older sweaters. This one is called Rhapsody in Cables. I'll put the link below in the comments. It was designed by Joji Locatelli. She is one of the top designers on Ravelry. I think all of us knitters have at one time knit one of her project patterns. She designs everything from hats, socks, cowls, shawls, a lot of shawls, pullovers, tunics, cardigans, and vests. She really does the full spectrum of designs. And her patterns are really well written. It's almost like she's an architect of knitting, but her background is actually a family doctor in Argentina, where she still lives. And for some reason she made the switch over to knitwear designer. This one we did as a knit along in the store quite a few years ago. I used the Malabrigo Rios, my favorite color, blue. And the project is knit starting in the center front. You do a provisional cast on, you knit one side out, and it is a very detailed pattern with lace, little baubles, cables, and then you go back and you pick up the provisional cast on and you knit the other side from the middle out. You leave all your side stitches on 2 holding needles for later on, and then you pick up stitches at the yoke, and there's a cable pattern that transitions from the yoke down into the sleeve. You can make a 3/4 sleeve or a longer sleeve. I wish I'd made a longer sleeve, so this one might get renovated if I can find the same yarn in my stash bin, and I might add to make a full length. So each sleeve is worked down, and then you pick up stitches at the back across the yoke, and you work a cable pattern down, and then you finish off by picking all the stitches up around the bottom to work a knit 2 purl 2 ribbing as the border, and pick up the neck stitches, knit 2 purl 2 border. You could do the crew neck, which is suggested. Some of our knit alongers did a stand-up neck or a beautiful turtleneck. And then you do a 3 needle bind off with the stitches that are on your holding needles and the stitches from the back. So when you finish a sweater like this, you do feel like a true architect, and you realize that it's completely seamless. Everything is joined as you go. So that is called Rhapsody in Cables. Hi Monique. Oh yeah, I love the indigo too. Just a deep dreamy color. Tammy loves the blue and the purple colors. Well, I think all of us could easily have a nice poncho for the spring and summer in a linen weight yarn. Just something to throw on when you really don't know what to wear and you don't know what the climate will be if you're going indoors. dining indoors, dining outdoors. These are all the things we'll get back to hopefully this summer that we haven't been able to enjoy. So that is my current WIP that is really holding my interest. I think I'm equally enjoying working with the yarn fiber, and I'm a big fan of textural stitches. I really like stitches that are innovative and interesting. So that is going on, but I'm equally interested in the construction, how it's all going to come together, because each strip is not a perfect rectangle. I have to cast off one side first and then continue on the other side to make a big step. So I will keep you posted on that. And I also want to mention that we have a knit along coming up. I think it'll be in April sometime. I'm just waiting for the designer to give the go ahead. It's a brand new pattern and it is being tested now, and then she does the final editing, and then the pattern will be out for knitters. So I will keep you posted on that. It's a very small project, but it's just something that I thought was truly beautiful, and I think you'll agree when you see it. And it's using one of our most favorite yarns, which is from Riverside Studio, hand dyed, combination of merino, cashmere, and nylon. So the new colors for the knit along are coming in at the end of the month, and I'll give you more information as soon as I have it, when the pattern is ready and when I can show you a picture of it. So I was going to talk about this sweater here. So this one is a traditional Aran sweater with cables, and it came in from a customer who doesn't like to do her own finishing, so I do that as one of my jobs. So I've sewn all the seams for her, and I still have to pick up the neckline. She wants to have a very traditional neckline, which will be a crew neck, but instead of casting off after about an inch of ribbing, she wants me to make it double thickness, so the neckline will be folded over and sewn to the inside. That gives it a bit more weight at the neck and more stretch and extra warmth too. So this is what we call a saddle shoulder, which is a very traditional style in sweaters. A lot of you have knit raglan sleeve pullovers, set-in sleeve, drop shoulder. This is a drop shoulder here. That means there's no shaping at the armhole. But I don't know how many of you have knit a saddle shoulder before. So I wanted to show you the details. I'll pull it off the mannequin. You could see it close up. And the yarn that she has used to knit this one in is absolutely beautiful. Much nicer than the old-fashioned fisherman Aran style sweaters from maybe 20 or 30 years ago. This is what we call Lama Natural Worsted. I've shown it to you many times, and it just feels so natural. You can feel the natural lanolin oil in it. It's softer than a regular Aran wool, and this is a mixture of merino and llama, so that's what makes it a little bit different from traditional wools. The other thing about the yarn is it's all undyed, so the colors are very subtle, just the shade of the natural animal. So there's a very subtle difference between the two grays. I'll bring it up to the camera. And the cream and the fawn has a bit more contrast. So there is just a little bit of difference between these two shades. The one on top seems to have a bit more of a browny gray blend, and the one at the bottom is more of a light gray. So we have to keep those two far apart in the shelves so that we don't get confused, and if it's somebody's picking yarn for a customer, we don't mix up the two colors. And then we have the cream, which is what the Aran sweater has been knit in. It's a beautiful cream, not too yellow, not too white, it's very warm. And then we have the next shade up, so the cream, and then the fawn color. So that is the yarn that was used in the sweater. So I will bring it closer to the camera and then you can have a look. So in the front, the traditional Aran sweater, she has done the center panel, and quite often you'll see the double seed stitches warped as the side stitches, so that when a pattern is written for larger sizes, it's easier for the tech editing. They just have to add more stitches in the double seed stitch. They don't have to change anything about the cables. So there's two cables going opposite direction. That's the single rope cable, and then the diamond cable has the double seed stitch as well. So that pulls it all together nicely. So the saddle shoulder is actually a variation of the raglan. It's decreased very gradually, and usually we would cast off at the top of the sleeve after we finish all the shaping, all the decreasing, but not on the saddle shoulder. The saddle shoulder has a strip that fills in the space between the front shoulder and the back shoulder. And one of the features of the saddle shoulder is that you can create a center panel that goes all the way up the sleeve and continues right along the shoulder, right up to the neckline. The other feature of the saddle shoulder is that it fits very nicely over the cap of our shoulder. It's very smooth and softly rounded, but there is more sewing involved. You do have to fit, the strip across the shoulder shaping at the front, and then also at the back. Yeah, so I just have to finish picking up stitches, do the neckline, and sew in some ends, and then the customer will pick it up next week and soak it in a nice bath of Eucalan wool wash, and it'll all flatten out nicely. There won't be any pulling. Blocking is always very important when you do cable work, because the cables need to relax a bit and show their best side. So that will be a finished object next week. I didn't knit the sweater, but I contributed by doing the neckline and the finishing. The finishing does take a long time. A lot of people don't realize that. There's hours and hours of sewing in ends and pinning, fitting, and then hand seaming. So that leads me to an interesting little bit of trivia. Does anyone know how long it takes to knit an average woman's sweater? This would be an average woman's sweater here, or what I'm wearing. These obviously would take more time because they have much more detailed pattern work. Hi, Colleen. Okay, so an average woman's sweater, you're going to spend at least 40 hours on it if it's long sleeve and not cropped, just a regular length. Regular length women's sweater can be about 22, 23 inches long. Sleeve length would be 17 to 18 inches. And crew neck, V-neck, turtleneck, whatever you choose. So keeping that in mind, that 40 hours is the average knitting time for a sweater project, something like this could take 60 to 80 hours because of all the cable work. That's much more intensive. You have to stop and read every single row of the pattern carefully. You have to keep track of your rows, you have to keep track of your increases, your decreases. There's not a lot of smooth knitting where you can just knit without thinking. So there's actually something called a sheep to sweater competition. I don't know if you've heard of it. Every once in a while when there's a yarn or fiber festival, some of the organizers get together and put on this type of competition. But there is actually a team that holds the world's record from 2017, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them. But the origins of the sheep to sweater competition go back to a wager that was first placed in 1811 in Berkshire, UK, just to prove that a knitted jacket could be made from shearing the sheep, so the fleece of the sheep, in one day. So somebody said, sure, we can do it. There's a lot of sheep to shear and we're up for the job. So they actually produced the jacket in 13 hours. So that involves shearing the sheep. I don't think they had time to wash the fleece because it would have to dry, but they would have to card it, spin it, and knit it. So that was way back in 1811. Since then, it has turned into a worldwide competition with teams of 8 participants, and that includes 1 sheep shearer and 7 others who spin, ply, wind, and knit the garment. So except for the shearer, members of the team can rotate their roles. So somebody who is a spinner can also contribute to the knitting of the sweater. There is no electric spinning wheels allowed or electric combs. Everything has to be done entirely by hand. It's very regulated. No team member can even leave the premise until the garment is complete. So if you are asked to be on a sheep to sweater team, you have to remember that you're going to be sitting probably in a barn for maybe 24 hours or more, depending how fast your team can produce the full garment. And there will be people who come along and they feed you, because you can't get up and leave and have a lunch break. I think you're allowed to have a washroom break, but they feed you food on little shish kebabs so that you're knitting and they can feed you and you don't have to put your knitting needles down. Every second counts. So the sheep can be of any breed of the team's choosing, but the sheep must be from the country where the competition is held. And each team is given the same pattern to knit. So of course it would never be a pattern as complicated as this one. It would just be a very basic, maybe a raglan pullover, not a top-down pullover, because when you have a team, you have to remember that each member who is in the knitting role has to be able to knit a portion of the sweater. So that means a separate sleeve, another separate sleeve, a back, and a front. And a top-down sweater means one person is working on the components all at once. So that would not work. I would say it's just a very plain raglan pullover, no pattern. There would have to be ribbing at the bottom and the top. So this leads me to who holds the record? Which team has the fastest time for completing a sheep to sweater project? So currently, if you look up in the Guinness Book of World Records, the fastest sheep to sweater team is a combination team of German and Dutch knitters. They have actually been clocked at 4 hours, 45 minutes, and 53 seconds. I can't process that number. I mean, I know that there's 8 of them, but 4 hours. So they won a competition in the Netherlands in 2017, and since then nobody has been able to beat their record. But the other little twist to this story is that one of the team members happens to be Miriam Teagles, and if you've heard me mention her before, she holds the record as the fastest knitter in the world. So if you have somebody like Miriam on your team, you really stand a good chance of winning. There's also something called a sheep to shawl competition. So that would be the same basis. You have a team consisting of 8 members, and one person shears the sheep, and then the rest are standing by to card it and spin it. And instead of knitting a garment, you're knitting a shawl. I just don't know how all the knitters can participate on one shawl, because as we know, shawls are generally knit in one section, either top down like a triangle or a long rectangle, or bottom up. So maybe they work in a relay where one knitter would knit for so many hours, rest your hands, the next knitter would take the needles and continue, and so on. So it's just something interesting that goes on in the knitting world. I mean, you know, for people who are outside of our realm and they don't know about yarn and fiber, they would never expect that there are so many amazing things that go on. I watched, maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, I did watch a sheep to sweater competition, and the team was in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, and they had a live video recording the whole event, so you could watch and, you know, go and have your dinner and come back and they'd still be at it. I think it took them about 23 hours. I really wanted to see what the finished sweater would look like. It was obviously in this color, the natural sheep wool, because there's no time to dye it or dry it, and it was very lumpy because the spinning was not refined, and it was very greasy. So can you imagine working with the unwashed wool across your needles? It would stick to the needles because it has all the oil in it, and it would be very hard to move. So thank heavens we have these more refined wools to work with. So that is all for today. I've shown you everything that's on my needles, and I will be back next Friday at 3 p.m. for Make It March. And I'll post anything that I have Ravelry links to shown in the video, including the sweater I'm wearing. And if you have any comments, or you're interested in putting together a sheep to sweater team, we could always contact our local fall fair and see if they're interested in letting that happen. Who knows? Knitters get together, all sorts of fun things can happen. So enjoy your weekend, stay warm, and let's look forward to nicer weather next week. Thanks everybody for watching.